Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another podcast. Now, today's guest is not somebody I'd say that I've ever had anybody like this person before. It generally is an honor to have like all different types of people and subjects, and not just necessarily go on like what some people do, where they have like one specific lane. It's nice to have like 20, 30 different lanes. But today's guest is a polymathic scholar who devoted over 50,000 hours to the study and practice of multi-dimensionals of human potential and development. That's it's Jim Marshall. That's to even devote that time to that subject. That's amazing. What made you what made you even want to do that in the first place?
Well, I was always interested in things like going back to early TV, The Twilight Zone, One Step Beyond, The Outer Limits. Are you familiar with those shows? These are like 50s shows.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That were about paranormal, parapsychology, inexplicable things, because I always wanted to understand everything. Now, in understanding, I was a born polymath, so I was intensely interested in learning everything. I was shocked at the age of 10 to find out that some kids didn't like school. That was news to me.
Okay.
I loved school. And so I was always searching. And eventually, many decades later, late in life, it led me to what I call Septemics, which is a new subject. I discovered an entirely new subject. There's no theory connected with it. It's all done empirically. So what happened was, I was an engineer, and by the time I had my bachelor's degree, I realized I really wanted to engineer not anything physical, but the human psyche. So I eventually became a human development engineer, and I worked for many decades with hundreds of clients and had great success helping people to become smarter, brighter, more ethical, more aware, more enlightened, and so forth. Every person is unique. So the results vary, but they were all very positive. And as I was doing this, I started observing that my clients would improve in predictable ways. And I never told this to anybody, but I started making notes. And that led me ultimately to discovering the subject of septemics, because I could see that my clients were going up scales. In other words, they were improving in ways that I had already observed would occur. In other words, I knew what result the guy was going to get before he got it, which of course made me even better at what I did. Mm-hmm. So I've sort of jumped now from helping people by the hundreds to helping people by the millions, because I spent 25 years crafting a book that will help anyone who can read English who wants to improve himself or improve his life. And I already know from 26 years of experience that it works. In fact, the first version of this book, which was passed around in early '96, right from the beginning, it got amazingly positive response. People generally are blown away by this book. It's a life-changing book, because it explains things that to most people are thought of as either inexplicable or random. And it shows that human phenomena is actually very orderly if you know the scales, meaning there are 35 scales in Septemics, and each of them has 7 levels, and each of them is a roadmap for some area of life. So it's extremely empowering to the reader because it opens his eyes as to what's going on. You see, as an engineer, I'm interested in only one thing, which is results. If you're in engineering, whatever you make has to work. Good intentions don't count, opinions don't count. Facts and results are what engineers pay attention to. So all this information presented itself to me empirically, and I started writing it down. And by about 95, I had about 32 scales of different lengths that I had observed just happening in front of my face with all these clients. And there's one scale in particular that had 6 levels that I knew absolutely was correct. In 95, I discovered a 7th level for that scale. And when I inserted that 7th level into the scale manifested mathematically. And then I knew I was looking at natural law, because anything that has a mathematical component to it is natural law. So when I put that information and I looked at the scale, I did not simply had a scale, all kinds of information just presented itself in the way that something mathematical would. And so then I asked myself, I wonder how many of these other scales are actually 7-level scales, but I just haven't developed them because I was doing this empirically. I wasn't looking for 7 scales. So then I looked at all these other scales, only 2 of which had 7 levels. And I discovered quickly the remaining levels on all these other scales. And I had about 32 7-level scales within a couple of months. Then I realized this is a separate subject. All of these scales are based on natural law, meaning I absolutely know they're correct. Now, when I say no, I mean, I know that the Pythagorean theorem is correct. As a mathematician, I used it continuously for many years. It was true before Pythagoras discovered it, and it will still be true after Earth no longer exists. Similarly, the acceleration of gravity near the surface of the Earth is 32 feet per second per second. There's no debate about that. It's been measured millions of times, okay? That is a fact. These scales are on the same order of knowledge. So I was very careful not to intrude any opinion in this and to simply present to the reader these scales as I discover them. So first I had to discover the phenomena, and then I had to use it to craft a philosophic system, which I called Septemics. And then from that, I had to publish it in a book, which I call Septemics Hierarchies of Human Phenomena. Now, from discovering the phenomena to publishing the book was 25 years of continuous work.
Okay.
Because there are 35 scales, each of which has 7 levels, has 245 different levels, each of which had to be verified. And I verify these. So I used all of my polymathic skills to first see that what this was, and then to put it into something useful. Now, the hardest part of it was conveying it in a way that would make sense to the average person. This is an 87,000 word book, so I went through it literally word by word, saying, how is this going to be accepted? How is this going to be viewed by the reader? And there were many rewrites, and a lot of effort went into making this something that would help people, because that's what's important to me, getting a result. As an engineer, you want to get a result. So this is human phenomena through the lens of an engineer and presented as natural law in a way that anybody who can read English can benefit from, and anybody who wants to improve himself can improve himself. And that's what it's about.
Yeah. Wow, that was a wow. That, I mean, I'm kind of blown away with all the stuff you just said, to be honest. I mean, it does make sense, but I do want to know, before I say the question I was going to say, previously you said you enjoyed school. I think it was way back at the start.
Yes.
Did you enjoy school, or did you enjoy learning, or was it just school in general?
Well,
because it's both. Okay. Some people enjoy the social side, some people enjoy the learning side.
Okay, well, that's a good point. Certainly, there were certain teachers or certain aspects of school that I didn't like. I mean, there were certain teachers who just didn't like me. Everybody gets that. That's a normal thing. Yeah. Which obviously is unpleasant and difficult and challenging. But certainly I love learning. I still love learning. And to me, knowledge is inherently, intrinsically valuable. So spending 25 years creating a new area of human knowledge was something that I did with enthusiasm. It was not laborious to me. I mean, there was a lot of work involved, but I was used to work because scholars work, you know. And I have to tell you, throughout my life, while other guys were shooting pool, bowling, playing video games, watching television, I was studying and meditating and researching. So all of this led me eventually to becoming a polymathic intellectual and to recognizing the subject for what it was. And then the hard part, presenting it in a way that would work for people. And I know from 26 years of observation now, it does. The book connects with people. You don't have to have a college degree to make sense out of this.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, so
But having said that, I went to very good schools, and so I liked school. Yes, I actually liked school very much. Although, as I said, there are always a few teachers who there's something wrong with them. You know, teachers are not, they're like every other group of people. There's some of them are weirdos and some of them are bad people. And so you're gonna run into a few of those. But even then, I had a math teacher who I'm pretty sure was a fascist from the way he behaved. You know, he's kind of like a Nazi. And I think mentally he wasn't quite there, but he was a great math teacher. Great. I mean, this guy really made me a mathematician. I had him for 2 years and I got very high grades. And as far as, you know, the way he behaved and the way he acted, well, I just ignored that. You know, and that's sort of, you know, how I was raised. I was raised in a time when children were to be seen and not heard. You did what you were told. You followed orders. You know, if they said do 27 algebra problems tonight, I went home and did the 27 algebra problems. That's how I lived. So the fact that some of these teachers were uncongenial, I ignored that really.
yeah. I mean, I think in life we all kind of meet people that you can't get on with everybody. Nobody. That's something that I've learned. I'm only 27, but that's something that I've learned that like there's always going to be people that don't agree with you or don't see things
Right.
your way or all this sort of stuff. But anyway, that's, you know.
That's right.
Yeah. But what I do want to know is that so Septemics, how does it, for example, someone that's viewing this podcast, because it could be anybody, how would it necessarily help that person specifically that maybe has that sort of initiatives that watches stuff, or how would it go with that?
Okay, I'll answer that. But before I do, let me just say what it is so the person knows what I'm talking about. Septemics is a philosophical science based on the fact that many phenomena related to human beings occur in a sequence of 7 levels. Literally, the word septemics means of or pertaining to 7. Septem in Latin means 7. Septemics comprises a collection of scales or sequences, each of which breaks down various human phenomena into a hierarchy of 7 steps. And as I said, there are 35 such scales which span the spectrum of human experience. If I were to read you the names of the scales, you would see that I've covered human phenomena. Because there are areas of human phenomena that affect everything. Like there's a scale of thought. Okay, thought is embedded in all human phenomena. So these scales each one is unique. Okay, and when I say span the spectrum of human experience, I mean there is no situation, I already know from 26 years of observation, that's going to come up in the life of a human to which one or more of these scales does not apply. That's not going to happen. I absolutely know these scales are correct the way I know that the Pythagorean theorem is correct. And I already know from observation and experience that anything that comes up you're going to be able to use this book to unravel it. Now, let me tell you how it's beneficial, because that was your question. I wrote this book to help people. Each of these 35 skills provides the user with an infallible way of determining the salutariness or beneficialness of any group individual activity. If any group individual activity moves persons or groups up these scales, it's beneficial or positive. If it moves them down, it's detrimental or negative. More importantly, just finding out what level you or another person or some group is at is by itself enlightening and beneficial. And finally, once you know the actual level of a person or group, you can improve that person or group by moving them up one level at a time. All of these advantages represent major steps forward for society. Each of these scales is an axis against which to evaluate human behavior. Combined, they empower one to understand, predict, and manage human affairs to a degree hitherto unattainable by most.
Okay. So, you were saying, I won't get you to name them all, but like, could you name some of them, and maybe the ones that, because they'll all be important, obviously, but there's bound to be ones that, or there might not be, but there could be ones that are necessarily more important than the other ones. I don't know, obviously, but in your opinion, if there was, could you maybe read out some of the names of them and maybe explain them? Would that be okay?
Well, first of all, let me say, the importance of the scale is determined by the reader. In other words, this system wraps around the reader and helps him to analyze and resolve his situations. So everybody is going to have a different opinion about what's the most important scale, and that's fine with me. But I'll just read you the names of the 24 individual scales. 24 of the scales apply primarily to individuals, and 11 apply primarily to groups. So I'll just read the names of the individual scales. The scale of basic purposes, the scale of personal influence, the scale of choice, the scale of permeation, the scale of thought, the scale of identity, the scale of evaluation, the scale of motivation, the scale of control, the scale of stopping, the scale of scholarship, the scale of literacy, the scale of human ability, the scale of memory, the scale of spiritual identity, the scale of mental deletion, the scale of aberration, the scale of physical fitness, the scale of justification, the scale of belief, the scale of equanimity, the scale of attack, the scale of conflict, and the scale of reaction.
Wow.
And most of these scales are what I call specific scales, meaning you can take that scale and you can apply it to many contexts. For example, you can find your own level, but you can also find somebody else's level. And that's extremely beneficial. I guarantee you, this book will save you from catastrophes, disasters, bankruptcies, divorces, arrests, indictments, and all kinds of other things, because it will forewarn you by using these skills what kind of a person you're dealing with.
Guarantee that.
And the way it's designed, it's user-friendly. For example, I mentioned the scale of motivation.
Mhm.
Every person has a motivation toward every other area or sequence of area of his life. For example, a guy will have one motivation toward his wife, another motivation toward his friend, another motivation toward his son, another motivation toward his father. Sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're different. But you could take that one scale and evaluate your whole life in terms of what is my motivation in each of these different areas. Now, the beauty of that is if you get the level correct, you can then improve your motivation by moving it up one level. So you've improved yourself. You have a higher motivation in that area. Even more importantly, if you know another person's motivation, that tells you most of what you need to know. If you observe, see, the fact that there are only 7 basic motivations works for you. It's not like you have to go through 1,000 motivations. You can look at a person and say, which of these 7 motivations is this person manifesting? And if you pay attention to the person and know the chapter, it's not hard to do. You'll see, okay, this guy is motivated by this. That can tell you something either very good or very bad. If it's a high motivation, it's very good. And if it's a low motivation, it's very bad. And so this can save you from getting involved with people who you don't want to be involved with. For example, one of the lower motivations is money. Money is not a high motivation. Many people are money motivated. That's the type of person who will pull the wool over your eyes and cheat you. You know, a lot of people, salesmen and such, they're money motivated. They just want your money. That's their motivation. And so if you can see that a person is money motivated, you want to be careful with that person. That's different from a person who's motivated by charity, which is the highest motivation. Charity comes from the Latin word caritas, which is the same word in Greek, agape, which means love, not in a romantic way, but in a, you might say, a platonic way. So a person who is motivated by charity, like Mother Teresa, she was clearly motivated by charity. She spent her whole life helping people, had a very difficult life, helping troubled people, sick people, poor people, okay? This was charitable, okay? So she was a highly motivated. You don't have to be worried. You could leave $100 bills around and she won't touch them. She doesn't care about that. She was not motivated by money. So that's one example. Yeah. But to tell you the truth, the way to use this book is to study it like a textbook, which is what it is. It's a textbook on a new subject. The way you would study a chemistry book or a math book or an engineering book or an economics book. And then when you're done, go back to the beginning and find your level on every scale. If you just do that, you will be a new person by the time you're done. I guarantee it. I have seen it. I've seen it with my clients. I've seen it with my readers. People come back to me and they say exactly what you say. They say, wow, this blew me away, because it's a new subject.
What I do want to ask, right, is I'm curious about 3. I always like before I go into like the ending questions, quote unquote. I do want to ask about 3 things that are in that book, because 3 things you said, and I'll name them all, and you can choose what choice you want to go in. The physical one, because it makes a lot of sense to me. The mental deletion, however you say it, and then the choice one, and I'm sure because that seems to be like what kind of subjects overall I kind of ask people anyway. So it'd be, I'm personally, and I know people that are watching and listening to this will be really interested in those 3 ones, I would say. So
right. Okay, so let me comment on those 3 scales. Mm-hmm. The scale of choice. Mm-hmm. Probably the biggest theme in human history is freedom. That's what wars are fought about. That's what everybody wants, okay? Whether they're civil wars or foreign wars, it's all about freedom. Everybody wants to be free. Well, what is freedom? Freedom is the power to choose. If you can choose, you're free. So a person who has $1 billion, he's free to choose. He can buy a Maserati, a Cadillac, a Lexus. People like us, we don't really have that choice. We have to buy a Ford or a Peugeot or something. So the scale of choice is extremely important. And believe me, it's an eye opener. When you see the 7 levels of choice, it'll take you a little bit of thought to see how this makes sense. But trust me, it does. So that's the scale of choice. And just as a comment, there are people who cannot make a choice. I don't know if you bumped into some of these people. They're very low scale people or down scale people. Now, I realize we're talking about scales. So people who are high on the scale are upscale, and people who are low on the scale I call downscale. And it's not really me deciding that. People tell you their levels. There are people the people who voted for Mussolini, Hitler, Mao, Pol Pot, all kinds of tyrants, okay? Those are people who do not want to make a choice. They want somebody else to make the choice. That is what a dictator does. So, for example, in the old Soviet Union, the government told you what job you would have, what school you would go to, what career you would have, what apartment you would live in, and so forth. There are people, believe it or not, who like that. They are not up to making a decision. I have a client who's like that. This is a brilliant person, a top professional, okay, makes a ton of money, can't make choices. If you give him a choice like, would you rather go to a movie or would you rather go out to dinner? He'll have a difficult time. Okay, that's just where he is on that scale, you see? So there are some people who are generally high on the scales and some people who are generally low, but most of us are in the middle, the vast majority of people. And the way that usually manifests is some people are high on one scale and low on another. Now, let me talk about the others. The scale of physical fitness. So I've been involved in physical culture, physical fitness my whole life. And this is something that was of compelling interest. It's in general, it's of interest to most people. And there is a scale, I can read you the scale and tell you what the levels are. But it's really important because remember, once you know the level you're at, it becomes possible for you to move up one level. You see, the biggest problem that most of us have in resolving situations or problems is that we don't know what to do. And the reason for that is that nobody can lose 100 pounds. You can lose 1 pound 100 times. Okay, there's a gradient. Good counselors and facilitators and teachers understand the gradient. They know how to bring the person along. I worked as a physical trainer. You can't just give a guy 100 pounds and tell him to work out with that. That's bad training. You have to find out how much can this guy lift on different exercises. Can he curl 15 pounds with one arm? Can he curl 20? Can he curl 25? And then after that, you want to know, well, how many? If he's curling 20, can he do 10? Can he do 15? So that's what a trainer is for, finding the right gradient. So you don't injure yourself, you don't get terribly sore, you don't get defeated because you feel this is too hard for you. That's what a good trainer or teacher does. That is what I did for a career. I have been involved in teaching and learning from the age of 3 continuously. There has never been a time that I wasn't involved in teaching and learning. And I mean in an organized way, either going to school or tutoring people or counseling people in a variety of contexts. I worked as a management expert and so forth. So it's all about teaching and learning. So the gradient, when you get the skill of physical fitness, you can see where you are. And once you get that, you then know what to shoot for. You follow me?
Yeah, I'm following.
For example, level 6 is sick, right? That's a level of fitness. Level 6, that's near the bottom, person who's sick, okay? This is a person who either you should be in a hospital or at home in bed or something, okay? Now, the level above that, level 5, is tired. So if you've been sick and you find yourself tired now, oh gee, I don't have a fever anymore, but I'm so tired. That's good news. You've gone up a level. You see, that's not something to be discouraged about that you're tired, because you moved up from sick to tired. And knowing that helps you to manage it, helps you to deal with it, to say, okay, now I'm going to go up to the next level. And that is what this book is about. It's to help people to improve themselves. And all you need is this book. I wrote this in a way that you do not need anything else except maybe a dictionary. But that's true for any book. If I were teaching any subject, and I've done a lot of tutoring on many subjects, I would want to have a dictionary handy, okay? So if you're teaching history and you come up with the word abolition, maybe the guy has no idea what that means. That's a big word in American history. So you have to look up the word abolition. And that tells you the whole 18th century of America was around that subject. So other than a dictionary, which I recommend for any book, you really don't need anything else. You don't need a therapist. You don't need a teacher. You don't need a school. You don't need to spend money. All you need is this book. Now, I wanted you to know, not only is there a glossary for every chapter, there is even a glossary for the introduction. So I'm making it easy for people to understand what I'm saying. For example, there's a scale of communication, fantastically empowering scale. It teaches you how to be a master of communication, which is great power. Ronald Reagan was called the great communicator. He won the greatest landslide victory in American history when he was reelected with 49 out of 50 states. I don't know if that'll ever happen again. That's how powerful his communication was. He came across to people. He didn't just come across to Republicans, he came across to Democrats and Libertarians and people who had no political party. He connected with people. So he was very successful. But think about this. If you look up the word communication in a dictionary, you'll see it has about 35 definitions. So a person could say scale of communication. What definition is he using? That's a good question. And I solve that because I give you a specific definition of communication. It doesn't go on for a page. It's one line. And I do that with every level of every scale. So you know exactly what I mean. There's no vagueness about it. And this enables you to understand the scale. Once you understand the scale, you can fit it to your situation, whatever's going on in your life. For example, let's say a guy has a romantic problem, right? Which most of us do.
Yeah.
There's a scale of relationships. That is a spectacularly helpful thing to have. There are 7 levels of a relationship. There's also a scale of allegiance. Allegiance is a big thing in relationships. If you start cheating on your wife, you have gone down the scale of allegiance. There's also a scale of sexuality. So any one of those 3 or some combination of those 3 will help you to resolve this situation. So basically, you study the scale, you be honest about what's really going on, you find your level, and in many cases like this, you find the other person's level too. Very often, that alone is all you need to do. Because sometimes you can see the incompatibility of the levels speaks for itself. It tells you right there, this is not going to work. This guy has a different purpose, a different goal, a different objective. It comes from the scales. You can see it right there. So it's crafted because there's only 7 choices. It's not hard to use. See, usually, if you look at a person or a situation, it's generally fairly easy to, within seconds, get a bracket. Say, well, this guy, he's either level 3, 4, or 5, right? So you have a bracket. So then you ignore the other 4, and you look at those 3, and you study it. Which of these is this person actually manifesting? So you see, you have to have good data. For example, I know the basic purpose of every president of the United States going back as far as Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Now, I was able to do that because I've studied these people. There's all kinds of video, recordings, books. It's not hard to find out about those people. So now before FDR, of course, there was no TV, but there wasn't even really radio. So it was harder to find out. If you want to find out about Calvin Coolidge, you really have to read books, which is fine. Many of the presidents prior to FDR, I do know their basic purposes because I've studied them. Washington and Jefferson and Lincoln are important historic figures. I studied them, I read books about them, and so I know their basic purposes. So once you know somebody's basic purpose, that tells you most of what you need to know about that person. For example, If the people of Germany had this book in 1933, Hitler never would have come to power. And the reason I say that is his basic purpose is to destroy. If you observe his behaviors, his actual actions, it's obvious. He was not only destructive to the enemies of Germany, he was destructive to his own country. He was destructive to his own military. He was destructive in all kinds of ways. He could have won that war in 1940. But instead of getting the English to surrender and making peace, he would have been in control of all of Europe. He did the stupidest thing in the world, which is to attack the Russians. That's why he lost the war. He had a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union, and he violated that by attacking them without warning. And that eventually did his cause in. That was a destructive thing. It was destructive to his own goals and purposes. You follow me? So you can't deal with a destructive person. I mean, if anybody bothered him, he just had them shot. So he did, and Pol Pot, the same thing if you study Pol Pot. He did fantastically destructive things. He murdered thousands of innocent people. He virtually wiped out the entire intelligentsia of his country because they were a threat to him. So you find this with Stalin too. Stalin virtually wiped out the entire officer corps of the Soviet army in the 30s because anybody who threatened him, he had him killed. And that's one of the reasons the Soviets had a lot of trouble in World War II. They had guys who they had to make sergeants into captains so they would have somebody to lead the unit. And those guys were not trained and they didn't have the experience. So he caused his own people. The Soviets lost 20 million people in World War II. And that would not have happened if Stalin hadn't killed all the officers off. If you have a guy who's a professional soldier, a colonel or a general, and you put him to death, you just threw away 20 or 30 years of experience that would have saved the lives of millions of people. So these are downscale people, okay? Mm-hmm. So once you know where a person is at on one of these scales, it really saves you a lot of trouble. You know, when I was a kid, I didn't know this stuff. It hadn't been invented yet. So I made the same stupid mistakes that everybody else makes. And I got involved with people who I regretted becoming involved with. Now I can never make that mistake because when I see a person, I get in seconds, I can spot him on certain scales. For example, when Obama ran for president, he was unknown to most Americans. He had just become a senator. He was only in the Senate for a couple of years when he started running for president. So mostly only the people in his state knew who he was. So I, like everybody else, said, who is this guy? And I started paying attention because he's running for president. So I was just listen to him, watch him speak, you know, and I was able to find his basic purpose. And that told me what he's all about. Now, I never give the level on any scale of any living person. It's not ethical. It's not fair. So I won't divulge that, but I do divulge the levels of deceased people. So there's a lot in the book. I give examples of people at different levels, historical people, and that helps a lot to illustrate what this is about. So there was a third one you asked about. What was the third one? Thought? Oh, deletion. Deletion. Okay. Most people don't even know about mental deletion.
I have no idea.
So, okay. So anybody in the mental health field understands that almost everything that's wrong with you comes from your subconscious. Even not only behaviorally, even physically. People have things in their subconscious that cause them to have allergies. And you can cure the allergies by resolving what's in the person's subconscious. This is not a new idea. This has been around for some time. So what happens in therapy is the therapist will help you find something in your subconscious, get you to take a look at it. And when you look at it, you delete it from the subconscious. In other words, it's not subconscious anymore, it's conscious. So by definition, once you're aware of it, it's no longer in your subconscious, so it doesn't have power over you. You can think with it. And that's what I did with my clients over and over and over, thousands of times. Getting them, by asking the right question, getting them to look at something. And then the person would say, I see. The reason I don't like Joe is because he reminds me of my father. And then that little thing in his subconscious deletes. And then he's fine about Joe. You see? So that's how therapy works. Or the work that I did with people as a human development engineer, I did not call it therapy because that suggests there's something wrong with you. And that is not the approach I took. I simply took the approach, I dealt with mostly capable people, upscale people, aware people, and I just helped them to resolve whatever issues they had. And sometimes you don't even know you have an issue. You find out in the session that there is an issue there. So, and if you look at the scale of thought, it explains that because the lowest level of thought is denial. You know, like there are people who every night they drink a quart of scotch, they fall down drunk, and then they say they're not alcoholics. The person's in denial. That's the lowest level of thought. But getting back to mental deletion, there is a scale of mental deletion. Now, I explain the whole scale. I explain what the essence of the mind, what the mind is, and how you can delete parts of it. And as you progress in mental deletion, you go up the scale. So it goes faster and faster and easier because the level you're at is a higher level. Now remember, the whole idea of Septemics is when you know what level you're at, you can then go to the next level. So my job, even before I wrote the book, was I would find the person at the level he was at, and then I would move him up one level. And the person would always be very happy about that. He would be smarter, better, relieved. So the scale of mental deletion, it basically takes you through how you delete parts of your subconscious. And some people do it through meditation. There are a lot of systems that are around for doing this now, because this idea of the subconscious, it's been around for over 100 years, and a lot of people have worked with it, and there's been a lot of progress. So there are various, not only in the mainstream mental health, of course, mental health community has hundreds of different subcategories in it. But even outside of that, there are many other various systems that address this. So of course, you would have to study the scale and see what it is. But I do take pains to explain the nature of the mind, which is something from my experience as human development engineer, I understand very well, very precisely from all of my work. I use biofeedback with the clients. And I think most people know from the so-called lie detector that when you think different thoughts, it has electrical impulses associated with it. So you learn to read these after a while. Different types of thoughts have different types of impulses. So I can tell what's going on with the guy just from looking at the meter. So I know how to address it. You see, if a person is upset, it reads a certain way. If a person is worried, that's not the same thing. It reads differently. If a person is keeping a secret, that's a third thing. That's a different manifestation. So I could see that and know what to ask. You see, know what question to ask, which is why I was successful at this. So the scale of mental deletion is something that is of great interest to anybody who wants to improve himself by resolving things that are in his subconscious. It's amazingly powerful information. And I really don't think anybody in the mental health community has this scale. I don't think they know this. I hope they benefit from it and, use it to help their clients.
Yeah.
So those are the three you asked me about.
Yeah. Wow. And those are the three that I would say more apply to not loads of people, but me. Like, that's why I was curious as well. But again, they might apply to other people that are, like I said, that are watching this, but those are the ones that really like piqued my interest. But what I do want to say is, like, before any closing, like I said, closing questions, but I just have more questions, is that so where are you wanting to go with Septemics now? Like, as of, what's it, 29th of May? Well, the 28th of May, but depending on where you are, I guess. But it's the 29th of May, 2022. Say, I'm not going to say, like, what's your 5-year plan, because it could change in 20 minutes. But, like, if you had to have, like, a 5-year plan or 10-year plan with Septemics, what would it be? Like, how far are you wanting to go down getting it into the medical field more than what it already is, or what's your goals?
Well, basically, my purpose is to get this book into the hands of people who want to improve themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Now, not everybody wants to improve themselves. About 57% of the population wants to improve themselves. So that's why I'm doing this interview, to get the word out, to get people to go to my website. If you go to my website, you'll find a fantastic amount of information. It tells you what readers have said about it, what people have written about it, what the reviews are, even sections of the book, and my contact information there. So it's septemics.com, septemics.com. I invite you to go there and learn about the subject. And most people who are inquiring want to improve themselves, and it's not a lot of money to get this book. The ebook is very inexpensive. Ebooks don't cost a lot of money. So I wrote this book so that it would stand on its own. So I want to get this book into the hands of as many people as I can. That's my mission. It's that simple. And let the reader go from there, because these scales wrap around the guy. In other words, every scale is expressed in what you might call a table or a spreadsheet or a matrix, in the same way as the periodic table of elements. And, before Mendeleev invented the periodic table, there was chemistry, but he revolutionized it by taking all the elements, putting them on one page in correct relationship to one another, so that the metals are all on one side, the inerts are all in one place, and it all makes sense that way. And of course, as the centuries have gone by, we've added to it. Now we're up to about 120 elements. Each one of these scales is expressed in a table very much like the periodic table. When you look at it, the information jumps out at you. You see, I see, this correlates to this. Because you see, as I discovered these scales, all kinds of implications jumped out. For example, I had the scales before I knew what axis they were measuring, because I got them empirically. Like, I would see that a guy would go from this level to this level to this level. Well, after I got the 7 levels on all these scales and I started researching it, I got very involved in what is the axis? And in many cases, it took me years, in some cases decades, to figure out what axis is this. For example, there's a scale of equanimity. Equanimity is extremely important. Most of the troubles in today's society that people have are caused by a lack of equanimity. So when you are higher on the scale, you do better in everything. Now, if you look at the levels, they correspond very much to what we would call maturity. Like you see a guy who misbehaves, you say, well, he's immature. So originally I thought it was a scale of maturity. But then as I researched it, I realized, no, though that concept is in it, but what we call maturity is really equanimity. See, like a little kid, right? If you say, no, you can't have a lollipop, he cries. He has very little equanimity. Whereas somebody who has high in the scale of equanimity, like Nathan Hale, who was one of the first American heroes. He was hung by the British as a spy. And upon the gallows, he said, "What are your last words?" He said, "I regret that I have but one life to give for my country." That is a very high level of equanimity. He was not daunted. He was not crying. He was not pleading, "Don't hang me." You know, he was high on that level. He was a great man. He risked his life for his country and he lost it. So that's an example of high level of equanimity. So that's an example of something where it took me a long time to figure out what is the axis. And now that I have found them, I'm giving them to people so they can see what's going on. In other words, you take an area of life like the scale of thought. You mean there are 7 levels of thought and they're in a sequence. So it tells you, you can observe a person and say, you know, this guy's level of thought is way down here. So I'm not going to associate with him. You want to associate with somebody who has a higher level of thought. And that's true for all these scales. The more up the scale a person is, the more valuable it will be to you, the more congenial, the more benefit you'll get from him. So you learn after a while to stay away from the downscale people and to associate with the upscale people. And that saves you a lot of trouble.
Yeah. Honestly, like, you know, I honestly, my mind's blown about some of the stuff you're saying, if I'm being honest, because it definitely, like, it makes, the thing is that it makes you think. So it's not only, I think it's not only the fact that I was listening to what you're saying and people were listening, obviously, and watching. It's more along the lines of everything you've said. It's like, oh, what happens if, like, that might apply to me? Like, what happens if it did apply to me? But then if it applied to me, this, what happens here? But if A applied to me, what happened? It's like, it goes round and round and round and round. It's really like,
that's right.
It's make it like, that's why I've been so, people are really, wow, you've been so silent. It's like, yeah, because everything you're saying, I'm like, this might,
that's what I mean when I
wonder if it's going to apply to me. And it does apply to me,
yes.
But I wonder how I can use Septemics to, yeah, I'm a little bit speechless, which is very rare, to be honest, but I'm a little bit speechless.
It's easy. I'll tell you how to use it. Get the book, study the book, and then use it to resolve your situations. And that's what I mean when I say it wraps around the person. When the person reads it, he says, oh yeah, I see, this is what I was doing, and this is what was going on with this person. And it gives you realizations. And just from that alone, you clarify your mind. You clarify what's really going on here. Because when people get into situations, their thought is cloudy. And this enables you to resolve the situations by clarifying your thought, by telling you with precision what is going on. So the data in this book are vital for every human being and can help you to achieve your goals faster and easier by explaining what might otherwise seem to be inexplicable or random. Now think of it this way. If someone were to invite you to a rendezvous, you would certainly expect them to tell you the exact location and perhaps also how to get there. Needless to say, it's very difficult to get somewhere if you don't know where you are, don't know where you're going, and don't know how to get there. Now, this sounds idiotic, but most people do this regularly.
Yeah.
So much so that it's considered normal. Most people don't know where they are. Like if I say, where are you on the scale of thought? I don't know. And you read the book and it tells you, okay, this is where I am. And then it opens the way for you to move yourself up one level. And I tell you precisely in the book how to use the book, how to read it, how to understand it, how to apply it to yourself and to others. There are whole sections in the introduction about how to use this on yourself and how to use it on others. It's very specific because my goal is to help people. You know, when I started driving, this is long before the proliferation of GPS units, and I had to go somewhere, I'd call up some person and ask him for, how do I get there? And I was surprised to find how many people did not know geographically precisely where they were. I mean, they couldn't answer my question. And to the degree that they didn't answer my question, they usually gave me some gobbledygook that didn't help me. So I started just asking for addresses, and many people didn't even know that. If this is true with physical locations, it's even more true with conceptual locations because they're abstract. So it's easy to see how people would have difficulty knowing where they are in their relationship. I'm giving you the scale of relationships. There are 7 levels of relationship. You can read it and say, bingo, I'm at number 4. And that clarifies your mind. So people who read this book, they have many realizations about what's going on in their lives. It explains things to them. And you have to realize it's not explaining something external. Like if you study chemistry or physics or biology, excuse me, or economics or anything else, it's external. It's not you. This is about you. So when you imbibe a certain skill, you've just learned about yourself. It's exactly what you said. It makes you think. Oh, there's this mental deletion. What is this? And if you read a chapter, it explains, I'm sorry, it explains that you probably have experienced some of this in your life. Now you know what it is.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
No, you seem it's all good. But wow. But I do want to. I am speechless a little bit. I think eventually I definitely need to get you on for a part 2 because again, just I'm trying to process everything you've said, and it's very, as I say, it's very rare for me to be super silent. But so where can people, I know you've already said, but where can people necessarily like follow you on? Because you have social media as well that I can maybe plug to people, and obviously all the website and that will all be in the bio anyway, but have you got social media as well?
Yes, I'm on social media, but I invite you to go to my website because the website tells you everything about this subject. It tells you, you can read sections of the book that will tell you what this is, how it works, why it works, and so forth. So go to septemics.com, and if you want to contact me, you can contact me through my website. That's what I recommend. And
yeah, that's fine. Right.
The other thing is, if you want to find the book, it's easy to find. If you just type the word Septemics into a search engine, you'll get hundreds of responses, including all the people who are selling the book. It's an easy book to find. Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, you can get it from the publisher. Or if you go to my website, there's all that information is on my website. So it's an easy book to find. It's an easy book to buy. It's in hardbound, softbound, and ebook. So some people prefer paper. Some people don't want to spend the extra money. If you buy the ebook, it's very inexpensive. And I can guarantee you, and remember, I have 26 years of experience with this. I can guarantee you, this book will be the best investment you ever make in your life. It will change your life. That is my mission, to help the people who want to improve themselves. The 43% of the people who don't care about self-improvement, they're not going to read this book. And even if they did, they wouldn't understand it. And even if they did understand it, they wouldn't use it. But the 57% of the people who want to help themselves and help the people around them, the majority of us, all of them, if you can read English, will benefit from this. So that's my recommendation. Go to the website and get the book.
Yeah, and as I say, I would love to have you on at some point in the near future. I'd love to have you on for a part 2 where we can properly go into some more of the stuff, because again, it's definitely like, yeah, and as people will be able to see, they'll be like, it's very rare that Kyle is actually speechless, but I am. Like, it's yeah, as well. But yeah, as I say, and I hope everybody does use what he said. And it's weird. What I do want people to do is, message me, or even go on Jim's website, Septemics, or even like message us again and just say, like, if anything he said that has, that you've used as much as I have, and you've been like, what he's saying is making like I can use it for this and I can use it for that. You know, really appreciate that. But I do again want to thank everybody for watching, listening, like, comment, subscribe. Go to Jim's website, Septemics, and honestly, I'm sure you'll probably be as mind blown as I am after everything he said. And I do want to thank you again for coming on, Jim. It was my pleasure to have you on, honestly.
Thank you, Kyle. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, and thank you. See you later, guys.
You've been listening to In Kyle's Convo.